want to see what it took to make this one, stick around. Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. A little bit of an apology on this one. Yesterday I was making this vase. It's a Norfolk Island pine, and it's actually a little bit different from anything I have done, not necessarily on the shape, but on how I decided to turn it. What I did is I mounted it at a 45 in the growth pattern. In other words, here's the center of the log, the pit, and on the opposite side is the other center. So I oriented it, like I said, 45 degrees from the growth of the tree. Well, I was doing the video on it, but I thought I hit the record button. So I mounted it. I showed the mounting of it, or at least it on the lathe, how it was oriented. And I'm turning and talking away as usual. And one point, I look at the camera, and the camera was on standby. So I had no idea how much you missed. Well, you missed all the important part of establishing what I was doing. So I'm going to mount another piece up, not make the same thing. I don't like doing the same thing twice, if you know me. But anyway, I'm going to tell you what I did and put the rest of yesterday's video together with this to hopefully show you what I did with this one. So what I did is I took it, first of all I had my jaws pretty wide open so it would fit. So I'm going to open them up. But anyway, the reason for is so it would wedge itself up in between the jaws and have somewhat of a stability, which worked out pretty well. So I had the jaws opened up more or less like that, nothing specific. I took it and I sat it this way. So I put it in between centers in this fashion, applied a lot of pressure into the tailstock where the live center literally buried itself into the wood. The back, let me see if you can see that. The back is embedded in between my gaps of my jaws. Wiggle it a little bit, lock up the headstock, wiggle it a little bit, and go a little bit more pressure. Now this is the orientation that I put on the piece into the lathe. Balancing is kind of important because it's a rather heavy piece, and you can see that I'm actually not too bad. A little bit bottom heavy, so back up the tailstock a little bit and raise it up to where it balanced itself off, just on the headstock. Balance it off as well as you can. You're not going to get 100%, but you are going to get it fairly balanced. Well, the next thing I did on it is I peeled away the bark. I took it all off because it's just going to fly all over the place. Now the bark on the other one might have been a little bit looser than this one, but I know that once I start going in here, this one is going to come out just as well. It just, I don't have any opening on it as of yet, but I will establish something. I'm going to get my parting tool and go in here, twist, in the live center. And I'm just going to set this up a little bit more in center around here. There we go. So anyway, it's got a good bite in there. It's well balanced, and how I established that design. So basically I set it up like this in the lathe. It's well locked in there. It's safe. The lathe, I ran it about 200 RPMs more or less. About this speed. And at this speed, it looks like a football. The overall shape determined what I was going to do. So I went in there and just kept going with my gouge, and I established it. And then on the side, established more or less the shape, parted off the very point of it, then flipped it over and started continuing with the shape that I was looking for, and that's where the video takes over, is from that point on. Oh my goodness, I don't know how much you guys have missed. Just looked and my camera was off. Well anyway, I reversed it, made it 10, reversed it, put it in my 50mm chuck, and started turning it back the same way I did that side from this end and went in here. I went in here in the same fashion and cleaned out the bulk of it. So right now I'm looking at what it is establishing on the piece. And I think that what I'm going to get is this type of a shape for a vase. It's time to look as to what's happening with this piece and where am I going to end up, how am I going to finish it. And I think this is going to be an amazing piece. Everything is going to be running in a twisty spiral. I think it's a nice touch. Got to go a little deeper here and around the neck as well. Now the mouth of the vase, I could very well maintain these two higher wings here and follow up down, or I could make it true all the way across And I'm not so sure which one is the best design. Now I could still go in here a little bit deeper and maintain this slightly higher, and maybe work out this tip a little bit, this broken chips. But the neck would come up a little bit small in proportion to the thickness of the body. So I think I'm going to keep it like this, and based on what's happening on the inside, I will decide whether if I'm going to keep the edges or not. So first thing I'm going to do is part it off no matter what on this area so I can drill it out and start shaping the inside. Then I will define or refine based on what I want and what I see. It really is just wet sawdust, pretty much. But I don't want to take it out because then I'll end up with pretty much nothing left on here. So I have to be careful and decide where's a good quitting point of me removing it and leaving it. The orientation didn't give me quite as much of effect as I was thinking it would. But that's what it is. We think something is going to turn out one way, we try it, and we see what it does. There is definitely a different effect to it than normal, but not as much, that's all. Well, at this point, I take it off the chuck and I make a jam chuck. in order to be able to adjust the gem chuck that I had to make it fit nicely around the neck with as little wobble as possible. Well, here I'm using a skew just to get to the very bottom of that as close as possible. And that worked out pretty well. It's got some, it had some serious decay in a lot of the wood, so it made it for an interesting project for sure. And when I put it up on the lathe, I thought it was the craziest thing that I ever put up. But I don't think so. It actually went rather well. A little bit better than I thought it would. The cutting, other than a lot of flaking and kind of pulling off where all the fibers were coming up, due to the fact that it was so dry. But once I got writing the bevel on it and got it more or less true, I was able to establish overall a pretty good cut, other than in this area right here where all the cross grain hit from this particular pit. But not bad. And over here where the wood was facing the top, where I had it stored outside. So this was the top of the log, per se, in this orientation. Well, it's soaked up, you know, a lot of moisture in here, and it started doing some decay and on there. No checking, because Norfolk Island pine doesn't really check. This is very close. This pit is very close to the top, actually, because this is the top edge from where the piece was cut, like this, in this orientation. This was the flat part of it, and down here was the other flat part. So this was very close to surface, and of course that's where I had the more of the deterioration, and it also, you can see it where it worked up on the neck area, going inside and all that stuff. That was just sawdust. I didn't even want to keep the sawdust there. I cleaned it up. Anyway, that's today's progress. Today's turning. Well, here it is. A Norfolk Island pine vase. Thank you for watching. And if you like it, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and you'll see some interesting stuff like this that I do on my future turning.